I think we were far away from the heavy metal thing, you know, because that seems to have a, you know, they're all quite similar, a lot of these bands, you know. They've all got these sort of, oh, sorry, I'm bumping the mic here. They've all got these pre-planned footsteps and stuff, you know.
And the spandex tights and all the gear.
Yeah, and, you know, and they've always got the guy with the blonde rug going.
Yeah.
And the drummer that smiles at the camera, you know. So for us, we were always being, you know, we can only be ourselves, you know. I mean, that's how we are. I mean, we could never really pose. We were not a posy sort of a band, you know.
To understand the sound and the fury of AC/DC, one must first understand Angus Young. For over 5 decades, the guitarist, clad in his signature schoolboy uniform, has been the visual and sonic heart of a band that has resolutely refused to change. In a world of shifting musical trends, AC/DC has remained a monument to the power of 3 chords, a driving beat, and a whole lot of volume. While perhaps more reserved in interviews than his late brother Malcolm or the irrepressible Bon Scott, Angus's opinions on music are sharp and uncompromising. His vision was forged in a clear philosophy of what rock should be. Anything that deviates from this path, in his eyes, is not just a different style, it's a lesser one. Angus Young's problem with the Rolling Stones is a fundamental one. It's not about personal animosity or a rivalry for chart positions. It's about the very definition of rock and roll. While AC/DC was building its career on a foundation of stripped-back, high-energy blues rock, the Rolling Stones were evolving. By the mid-70s, they were incorporating a wider range of influences, from funk and reggae to disco and soul. For many, this was a sign of their incredible versatility. For Angus Young, it was a betrayal.
You feel confident you got the right songs. It's just, you know, it's the matter of getting in the studio, getting the best sound, and capturing those, you know, the idea.
He saw this genre blending not as innovation, but as dilution. In his view, the Stones were abandoning the very essence of their power. In a widely cited interview from 1977, he expressed his belief that the Rolling Stones had started to play soul music, a genre he felt they should leave to its originators. He argued, if the Stones played what they do best, they'd be a hell of a lot better, suggesting that their attempts to be something else were making them less than what they were. This wasn't just a flippant comment, it was a reflection of his belief in musical purity. For him, rock and roll had a specific sound, and the Stones were straying from it. In another interview from that era, he was blunt about their trajectory, stating he believed that their quality had declined after they released Jumpin' Jack Flash and Street Fighting Man, declaring that beyond those tracks, there was little of worth. For Angus, those songs represented the pinnacle of their rock power. Everything that came after was a step in the wrong direction. It's a perspective that highlights the core of the AC/DC philosophy: find what you do best and do it relentlessly. Despite this sharp critique, the relationship was not entirely adversarial. On their tour in 2003, AC/DC opened for the Stones, with Angus and Malcolm even joining them on stage for a rendition of the Chuck Berry classic Rock Me Baby, finding a moment of common ground in the simple, powerful rock and roll that Angus had always championed.
Now we've got to go back in the box.
Bless their hearts, I mean, what a great little bundle of energy they are.
Snap my back!
The name Eric Clapton is often spoken with a certain reverence. In the 60s, Clapton is God was famously scrawled on a wall in Islington, a sentiment that echoed through the decades. He was hailed as a guitar virtuoso, a blues purist who brought the music of B.B. King to a new generation. But Angus Young, surprise, surprise, was never a believer. He saw the adulation surrounding Clapton not as a rightful tribute, but as a testament to a grand misunderstanding. For Angus, the issue was one of authenticity. Clapton, in Young's view, wasn't channeling the blues so much as mimicking it. All technique, no soul. While critics widely praised Clapton's work with Derek and the Dominoes and his extensive solo career, Angus held the firm opinion that his legacy was built on a very thin foundation. In a scathing assessment reported in interviews during the 90s, he argued that Clapton merely sticks licks together that he has taken from others, putting them together in a mishmashed fashion. He claimed that the only truly great album Clapton ever made was the Blues Breakers record with John Mayall, alongside a few standout Cream songs.
Which is very important.
Could you just do that again?
Yeah.
To put his point into perspective, Angus often compared Clapton to his own hero, Chuck Berry, a musician he considered the embodiment of rock and roll guitar. In one interview, he stated, "Everyone always used to rave about Clapton when I was growing up, saying he was a guitar genius and stuff like that. Well, even on a bad night, Chuck Berry is a lot better than Clapton will ever be."
Oh, you want a bit of Chuck? I'll do my best.
Clapton, in Angus's eyes, lacked the authenticity and fire that defined true rock and roll. The feud between AC/DC and Deep Purple is the stuff of rock legend, a story that goes beyond verbal sparring and into the realm of physical confrontation. Angus Young's disdain for the band was rooted in his musical philosophy, but it was cemented in a muddy field in Australia. His most famous dismissal of the band was sharp and definitive: a poor man's Led Zeppelin. It was a cutting remark that framed Deep Purple not as pioneers in their own right, but as second-rate followers of their more successful contemporaries. He found their music to be overwrought and ineffective, later recalling, "I saw Deep Purple live once and I paid money for it and I thought, geez, this is ridiculous." He saw their attempts at musical complexity, their long organ solos and classical flourishes, as a distraction from the raw power that should define a rock band. This simmering dislike boiled over on the 25th of January 1975 at the Sunbury Pop Festival. Deep Purple were the international headliners, and AC/DC were the hungry local band. The day was plagued by rain, and according to AC/DC's manager Michael Browning's memoir, Dog Eat Dog, logistical failures on the part of the promoter. An agreement had been made for AC/DC to use Deep Purple's larger PA system, but after Deep Purple finished their set, their road crew, allegedly on their manager's orders, began to dismantle the equipment. This act was seen as a deliberate attempt to sabotage AC/DC's performance. The young band refused to be intimidated. A confrontation erupted on stage, with Browning recalling, "I had AC/DC, my road crew, George Young and myself in a major brawl with all of Deep Purple's crew and manager."
They started an all-in brawl with English headliners Deep Purple at the last Sunbury in 1975.
Somebody threw a punch at our manager, one of Deep Purple's tour guys, you know. So that was it. Bon was sort of he had someone in there, like a headlock, and this guy was sort of spinning him, and Bond's yelling out to us, "Don't worry guys, I got him." And I got on the microphone. I said to the kids at the front, because they started coming over the fence, I says, "Hey, we need a bit of hand up here." We never got to play in the end, but the next day, that was all that you read about, was AC/DC in brawl with Deep Purple.
They left the festival without playing a single note, but the incident became a crucial part of their story, solidifying their reputation as a band that would not be pushed around. For Angus, the fight was likely a physical manifestation of his musical beliefs, a visceral rejection of a band he saw as pretentious and unworthy of their status. In the mid-70s, As AC/DC was perfecting its brand of high-voltage rock, a new sound was exploding out of New York City. The Ramones, with their leather jackets and 2-minute blasts of raw energy, were laying the groundwork for punk rock.
We want the world and we want it now. We're gonna take it anyhow. We want the airwaves.
One might think that Angus Young, a fellow believer in simplicity and power, would have found a kindred spirit. Well, if one did, then one hasn't been paying attention. You would be wrong. Angus was profoundly unimpressed by the punk scene he encountered. His assessment of the Ramones was withering. The Ramones? I only heard them once. I heard a song and it did nothing, he said in an interview. It seemed to me like the first band I was ever in, and I'm sure even that was better. And that was when I was 12. His criticism went beyond mere musical taste. It struck at the heart of what he considered legitimate musicianship. He compared the Ramones unfavorably to an earlier generation of rock rebels, the Small Faces, a band fronted by Steve Marriott. He acknowledged that punk bands had the right attitude, but argued that, unlike Marriott, they can't play and they can't sing. Decades later, he reflected on his disconnect with the movement, explaining that its political messaging was lost on him. He saw punk as selling anarchy, like a political thing, a concept he found alien. He famously noted in one profile that the first time he heard the word anarchy, he had to look it up in a dictionary. While punk had a significant political and cultural impact, Angus admittedly never connected with it. His own musical education was rooted in the themes of Chuck Berry: cars, women, and party time. That, to us, was rock and roll. To Angus, rebellion without rhythm wasn't rock and roll. It was just noise. Angus Young's take on Pete Townsend of The Who is perhaps more nuanced than his outright dismissal of other artists. It's less about a hatred for the man or his band, and more about a weariness with his influence. He acknowledges the raw power of Townsend's early style, but argues that its very effectiveness led to its downfall through endless imitation. In a Guitar World interview, Angus recognised the visceral appeal of Townsend's approach. It was all bang, bang the hell out of the guitar. This wasn't a criticism, it was an observation of a style that was undeniably powerful. The problem, from Young's point of view, was what came next. He believed that Townsend's style, for all its energy, was ultimately simple to replicate, and because it was simple, a generation of guitarists copied it, devaluing the original. The style he plays is probably the most imitated in the world, Young stated. Not as a compliment, but as an explanation for his fatigue.
Because a lot of trends come and people go, well, the flavour of the day is this new pedal and that pedal. And if you see them now, it looks like a space station up there. You see the guys got all these racks of gadgets and stuff, And we used to think that, it was just one more thing to make more racket that didn't sort of enter into the music side of it. So we used to say, scrap that.
This feeling contributed to a broader sense of disinterest. There are a lot of good guitarists in the world, but you just lose interest, he explained. He wasn't explicitly saying Townsend was a bad musician. Rather, he was critiquing the effect of his over-imitated style. The shock of the new had worn off, replaced by the drone of the familiar. For a musician as dedicated to raw, unvarnished impact as Angus Young, there could be no greater sin than becoming a formula. The moment originality turns into imitation, he tunes out.